How do you win clients in a trust recession? That's what we're going to be looking at in today's podcast. Today, we're really going to dig into this epidemic that is happening online where people no longer take people's word. And this actually is a self-inflicted thing because if you look for the last few years, you've had people selling courses saying you can run a social media marketing agency, you can be a coach, you can be, the next guru, and you don't need any experience, which we know is a lie. I was talking with somebody just yesterday about how easy it is for somebody with no actual experience to then say, I'm a business guru. They've never ran a business before. And these kind of people leave a trail of destruction, trail of disappointment along their learning journey. And what do I mean by that? I mean, a lot of these people who go, right, I've never run a business before, but now I'm going to become a business guru. I've never run social media before, but now I'm going to become a social media guru. Actually learn on the job. They take an apprenticeship. Unfortunately, they're paid by clients who suddenly realize they're not as good as their marketing says they are. And that's happened to me, it's happened to you. And so we are far more cautious about who we do business with, and even more so now cautious the fact that engagement can be faked, followers can be faked, video content can be faked, everything can be faked. It leaves us in a huge trust recession. And whilst we might be the real deal, we might have the years of experience, we might have the track record, when it comes down to it, to a complete stranger, they are skeptical, and they're going to be skeptical with us, and they're going to be skeptical with other people because they've heard the horror stories or they've experienced the horror stories. Buyers are far more cautious. They're not cynical, but they are cautious. And the big claims, the big promises, the ridiculous promises even, are now so cheap that people see through them. So confidence that used to be, if you were confident on social media, that would be enough. But now people are digging and looking behind that and going, who is this person? Is this person a real deal? How long have they been around? What's their backstory? And they're no longer just believing or trusting in the marketing they're receiving. They're actually doing that research. So trust is not just persuasion. It's not just about, do people have a good vibe having a conversation with me anymore? It's about a pattern leading up to the conversation, that consistency of message, the relevance of your message that really is going to make a difference. Selling cold, especially if you're an expert and you're not known, is one of the hardest things to do, because even if you get a call from a cold outreach campaign, even if you get that, you've still got to overcome that trust barrier of, I'm meeting you for the first time and you're proposing I invest 4 figures, 5 figures, 6 figures in you. I need to know that you're the real deal. So in this kind of trust recession where we can't believe our own eyes, because that's the reality with all the AI videos, the fake testimonials, the fake engagement, we cannot believe our eyes. Even when you see, look at it yourself, when you see an Amazon review with 100% like 4 and 5 star reviews, no negative reviews, it makes you skeptical. So throwing out big promises without any backstory or context, overconfident positioning without an evidence or audit trail. And by that, I mean, does the internet, let me give you an example. Some of the gurus that are out there saying that they can transform lives and businesses and they've built multiple businesses, why can't you find their businesses? Why can't you find them? There's one guy at the moment being sued in the US for $150 million fraud, and he says he made his millions from e-commerce stores. Why can't you find those e-commerce stores? And this is the bit that people miss. Leaving that trail on the internet of stuff that you've done is to help people see that you are more than just your marketing. So the big promises, the confident positioning, saying you're, a big dog, but without the evidence trail that you've done it. Even things like asking people to book a call with no previous relationship, or asking people to book a call without any context. Like, I often say to my clients, get your offer out there. Don't just put your book a call. Get your offer out there so people can know what you do before they book a call. It sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do that. They don't clearly explain what they do. They don't make it easy for people to understand what they do, and then ask people to book a call blind. And I get it. It's because sometimes we don't see the wood for the trees. Sometimes we're in the middle of stuff. We don't realize, actually, I'm not presenting a clearer picture. And there's a really interesting statistic right now that somebody would need to see. It used to be somebody would need to see who you are and what you're about 7 times before they would seriously consider you and consider buying. It's now somewhere around 11 times because of that drop in trust, that drop in the basic decency, the perception of the basic decency of human beings. So you've got to get your stuff, your message, your offer seen by people 11 times for people to actually seriously consider it. Now, that doesn't mean they have to read a 1-page, outline of your offer 11 times, but they have to see it dotted around 11 times to build that trust. But my experience is working with a lot of business owners is they change like the wind. And so what happens is, I posted something about my offer once. I'm bored of this now. I'll change to something else. Or I've posted this 3 times. Nobody's biting, so I'll change it to something else. It's 11 times to consider it. So ask yourself, if trust is about consistency and repetition, have you consistently shared the same offer in different formats, in different ways, more than 11 times? And how often? I'm guilty of this. I look through my profile, look through my posts and go, how often have I mentioned the Social Selling Accelerator? And it's actually very few. It's far less than I think. I tell people 20% of your time you should be talking about what you do and what you offer. And actually, I look through my own posts and go, I always drop them. Why do I instinctively drop them? Because often they're not the posts that are going to fly because I'm talking about what I do. So this is really critical to understand, that it's not just about you differentiating yourself from the competition. You have to differentiate yourself from other people's bad experiences. And so just being present, consistent on message, and giving people that opportunity to have those 11 touch points of your offer and who you are will actually massively improve the trust people have in you. So think about this another way as well. What else builds trust? Well, when you're inconsistent with your message, that obviously causes a problem. But I want you to think about being too broad to be beneficial. Too broad to be beneficial. And I see this a lot. So imagine you're my customer. Would you trust me more if I could talk into and explain your specific situation? If I started posting and my posting mirrored your specific situation, would you trust me more? You probably would. And this is where we fall into a trap, because we think that actually appealing to more people actually will help us. But in reality, it doesn't, because the people can't see themselves in your message. You speak in generalizations, you speak in concepts rather than specifics, situations, circumstances, and feelings. But when you start to speak into specific situations that people feel and people see day to day, guess what? They start to trust you more, because it's like, Dean understands me. Dean understands me. So you have to name the situations, the moments, the feelings, so that people go, Dean, or whoever you are listening to me today, understands me. So if we think about being consistently on message, this is about really resonating with that message and drilling that message down so you build trust, because you're speaking to specific circumstances, which gives you an acceleration of trust, because people go, you really understand my situation. That's a huge trust builder when people go, oh my God, it's like you're describing my situation and how I feel. And then another thing that's really useful to you, and I've talked about this before, is actually telling people the downsides or who you're not for. So one of the things I learned really early on is that a lot of my approaches for social selling don't work if you're selling low ticket. So if you're selling high ticket stuff, $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $50, $100,000 price points, it works brilliantly because you're not reliant on volume. But if you're trying to sell a $97 course, you need volume. Completely different game. So I am actively telling people I can't help you if you're selling low ticket. Now, low ticket as a means to sell high ticket is a little different. But name the trade-offs, the downsides of your approach. My approach doesn't work if you're trying to sell low ticket and make, profit from a low ticket. If you're trying to use low ticket as a way to sell a high ticket, my approach works because you don't need a lot of low tickets. If you've got 10 low tickets, you'll probably get 3 or 4 high tickets. So tell people who it doesn't work for. That's really a good trust accelerator to show who you're not for. But another one, so we've talked about, that whole piece here of actually just being consistent. And we've talked about being relevant, really dialing in. And you can't do that while speaking to a broad audience because they won't see themselves in what you're saying. I want to talk about restraint. Trying to prove and convince people is it is one of the reasons you will struggle to build trust. So I see this all the time, people trying to explain why their stuff's so good. If you have to explain why it's because it's so good, you're defending yourself. You should assume people get it's good and just literally help people see the results of what you're doing. So if you're defending what you do, trying to convince people what you do, it feels natural to over-explain. It feels natural to go into more detail because it's not as simple as it looks, or my program isn't as basic as it might appear. Trying to explain or convince makes you look like you need customers. The worst thing that you can look like is you need customers. You need clients. So if people feel like they're being chased by you, if people feel like you need them more than they need you, it's a trust destroyer. Don't feel you need to answer every question. Don't feel you need to over-explain in every post. It's a real put-off for people when you try to justify and convince. Let people ask you questions. Let people jump in and message you. In fact, one of the things that I say to people is if you over-explain in your message or your content, there's no reason for people to talk to you. So restraining yourself from going to convincing mode or justification mode or over-explaining mode is massive. Yeah, and you think, well, if I give them more information, that means they'll trust me more. No, it looks like you're trying to prove something. You're desperate to prove something. When you feel like you don't have to, when people feel like they're not being chased by you, when people feel like they are not trying to be convinced, they feel more at ease. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean, I don't follow up proposals. I don't follow up leads. That's wrong thinking. You have to follow up, but how you follow up matters. Chasing people with follow-up is bad, but actually giving them a nudge to say, this is where you wanted to go. Is this still something you want to do? It's fine if you don't. It's just about how you do it. The thing to remember here is that building trust is a journey people go on. It's not an event. It's a process, not an event. And so people need to experience that over a period. And that means it's not about one case study or showing one result in a post. It's about people getting a picture built up, a dot to dot, that they can join the lines and build that up themselves. And so you've got to put that stuff out there to go, how am I getting people to trust me? Well, one is I have to be consistent. 2, I have to be relevant. So I have to focus on who's this all for. 3rd, I have to restrain myself from over-explaining. And then I have to build that dot to dot. That if somebody looks at my profile, looks here, looks on my website, looks at my content, and if they're looking at lots of fragmented information, and you have to assume they're looking at it fragmented, you can't assume, they saw that post last week and now they've seen this here and they've seen this here. They will see fragmented information. So you have to think, how am I dropping? A bit like Hansel and Gretel, I think it was, where they dropped breadcrumbs. I think I've mixed my childhood stories up here. But you're dropping little breadcrumbs for people to find, and they will join the dots themselves. Don't try and make one post that does all the heavy lifting. Don't try to make one event, one newsletter, one thing do everything. And that's why it's really important that you build up that pattern that everywhere they see, there's a little nugget about what you do. There's a little nugget about how you've changed somebody's life or business. There's a little nugget about how your program works. Not one big thing, but lots of little things scattered so that people, as they're doing their own research, can pick them up themselves and not go to your brochure, which they won't trust. They won't trust your brochure on their own. They won't trust, the testimonials you put out all in one place. It's the pattern, the picture that builds in people's minds. And that picture might have to build over 11 looks, 11 touch points, 11 pieces of content, 11, profile views, content views, seeing you replying to comments. All of that stuff builds that up. But it starts with consistency, relevance, restraint, and then building that dot to dot of little snippets of things out there. Even things like real simple things, like when you write a post and you're saying, okay, I want to share from my experience. Actually, why not use years? So about 8 years ago, I had a client. I've been doing this for 15 years and I've seen a lot of weird things, but this is one of the weirdest encounters I had with a client. What does that do? It was just a little bit of context, but you're leaving people with you've been doing this for 15 years. I've had over 200 clients achieve successful results. But here's one client I could not help. That shows a bit of honesty, but also it shows the 200 clients you have helped. So just think about these little snippets. When you get a testimonial, just throwing it out there going, oh, really chuffed to see this. I love getting these. It makes my day. Little things just thrown out there to build that pattern of trust, that there's breadcrumbs that people can see and pick up and join the dots with. That's how you build trust in 2025, 2026, because there is so much fakery out there. I'll leave you with one story. And this happens, but there is a kind of reciprocity nature to social media. And one LinkedIn guru who I'm reasonably friendly with said to me, hey, Dean, thinking, why don't we do a review for Review Exchange? And basically what they were saying is, I'll review your program if you review mine. And this happens a lot, by the way. That's why you'll see a lot of the same faces reviewing and engaging with each other. It's like they're all puffing each other up and inflating each other. And I think it's quite questionable to get to review each other's programs if you haven't been through each other's programs. And, you can buy reviews these days. I don't encourage it because it's not ethical. But you can, and people do this. And I think there's going to come a reckoning where people go, why are you an Instagram guru reviewing another Instagram guru's posts? Why are you a LinkedIn guru and all of the people reviewing your program are actually LinkedIn gurus with their programs and you've reviewed theirs too? It really does erode trust. So, creating that dot to dot that people can join the dots themselves. Little breadcrumbs of trust scattered out there, thrown out there. You might go, well, what was the point of doing that? But it's actually moving somebody further on in their trust journey by just little things here and there, just adding that in my 15 years, or just throwing that review out there, like without too much fanfare. Those things just dotted around, putting some stuff on your website so people can find it there, putting some stuff on a blog or stuff. It's all little tiny things that creates this scattering of trust that people can find, discover, and connect the dots themselves. People trust things more when they join the dots themselves. And if you're trying to convince, you will struggle. So we are in a trust recession, and so you have to release little nuggets of trust building everywhere. Don't expect massive movements from them. They are there to help people validate you. And it's all little things. Don't go for, I've just published a book and it's got 500 5-stars. That's one little element of building trust. Think about all those little tiny things you could do to build trust. Tiny things, referencing your year's experience, telling some client stories, being honest about who your program or services don't work for. All of these little things scattered out there can actually create that trust journey for other people.